What if Israel is already choosing its next big enemy, and the proof is right there for everyone to see? Stay with me until the very end. You will notice the pattern, and I think you will want to subscribe. Turkey's foreign minister explained it clearly on national television just yesterday. He said Israel cannot live without an enemy, and he did not stop there. He said Israel is now working to make Turkey into that next enemy. This is not just one politician talking anymore. It is becoming Israeli state strategy. Most people are watching the blockade, the ceasefire talks, the oil prices, but I think they are missing the real story. The Iran war is not the end of anything. It is the beginning. And when you see what I am about to explain for you today, you will understand exactly what comes next. I call it the Playbook. 7 clear steps Israel has used against every enemy it targets. With Iran, it took 10 years. With Turkey, it has already begun. And 5 of those 7 steps are already complete. Let us walk through it together. Before I show you the playbook, I need to explain why it even exists. Because this is not random, it is structural. Once you see the structure, the pattern jumps out. Israel is a country of 9 million people, surrounded by 400 million Arabs. From the very beginning, its security model has rested on one simple principle. You survive by making sure your neighbors stay weak, divided, and afraid. The moment your neighbors grow strong, united, or confident, you are in danger. That means Israel's entire security plan needs a permanent outside threat. Not because threats always exist, but because without one, the whole plan falls apart. Think about what happens if Israel suddenly has no enemies. The $3.8 billion in yearly American military aid depends on the story that Israel is under constant threat. AIPAC, one of the most powerful foreign policy groups in American history, raises money and shapes elections on the argument that Israel needs protection. Tens of millions of American evangelical Christians vote based on their belief that supporting Israel is a religious duty, and every dollar of that aid must be spent on American weapons, which means the money flows straight back to Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon. Those companies then lobby Congress to keep the aid flowing. It is a closed loop. Congress funds Israel. Israel buys American weapons. The weapons companies lobby Congress for more funding. And the fuel that keeps this loop running is the existence of an enemy. No enemy, no threat story, no threat story, no aid, no aid, no weapons, no weapons, no regional power. The entire machine stops. That is why Israel never stops after defeating one enemy. It cannot stop. The machine needs fuel, and the fuel is always a new enemy. Analysts call this mowing the lawn. You cannot kill the grass forever, so you cut it down, let it grow back, and cut it again, forever. Except the lawn keeps getting bigger. Just look at the sequence since October 7th, 2023. Hamas, then Hezbollah, then Syria, then Yemen, then Iran. 5 enemies in less than 3 years. And Iran is not even finished yet. Already, Israeli leaders are naming the next one. One of the most popular comments I have seen on this subject put it perfectly. Defeating Hezbollah was the quarterfinal. Iran was the semifinal. Turkey is the grand final. Now let me show you the playbook. I have identified 7 steps Israel follows for every major enemy, and what you are about to see is that every single step used against Iran is now repeating with Turkey. Step 1. Name the enemy. With Iran, this started decades ago. Israel spent 20 years telling the world Iran was an existential threat. Every speech at the United Nations, every interview, every lobby meeting, Iran, Iran, Iran. With Turkey, it started on February 17, 2026. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett stood before the Conference of Presidents of major American Jewish organizations and said a new Turkish threat is emerging. Turkey is the new Iran. We must act at the same time against Tehran and against Ankara. Bennett is not some backbencher. He is a former prime minister expected to run again and win, and he chose the most powerful Jewish American audience in the world to make this declaration. That was not an accident. That is step 1. Step 2. Build the story. With Iran, think tanks like the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and the American Enterprise Institute spent years publishing reports, briefing journalists, and feeding Congress the story that Iran was the greatest threat to world peace. With Turkey, the same machinery is already moving. The American Enterprise Institute has published analysis questioning Turkish secularism. The Foundation for Defense of Democracies has accused Ankara of growing terrorist groups. The New York Post has run pieces framing Turkey as a threat. One analyst even posted in Turkish on social media asking whether Ankara in 2036 will look like Tehran in 2026. The story making has begun. If you know where to look, you can see the factory running. Step 3. Economic warfare. With Iran, the United States tore apart the nuclear deal and put maximum pressure sanctions that choked the Iranian economy for years. With Turkey, the economic war is already underway, but it started from the other direction. Turkey put a complete trade ban on Israel in May 2024. No imports, no exports. Turkish ports now require written guarantees that ships have no connection to Israel. Israel's foreign minister accused Erdogan of giving up his country's economic interests for Hamas, and Israeli leaders have demanded Turkey's removal from NATO, which would be the ultimate economic isolation. Step 4. Set up a proxy battlefield. With Iran, Syria was the proxy battlefield for over a decade. Israel struck Iranian targets in Syria hundreds of times. With Turkey, Syria is once again the battlefield. Israel has taken more than 600 square kilometers of Syrian land. It has told the Syrian military it cannot operate south of Damascus, and the main reason Israel is pushing deeper into Syria is to stop Turkey from strengthening its position there. Turkey has troops in northern Syria. Israel is expanding from the south. The two forces are moving toward each other. Step 5. Alliance encirclement. With Iran, Israel built the Abraham Accords, bringing the UAE, Bahrain, and eventually Saudi Arabia into a normalization framework that isolated Iran diplomatically. With Turkey, Netanyahu has announced what he calls a hexagon of alliances. The members include Greece and Cyprus, two countries with long conflicts with Turkey; India, which has its own tensions with Pakistan, Turkey's closest ally; and Gulf states that compete with Turkey for regional leadership. The hexagon is not about peace. It is a geographic encirclement of Turkey. Step 6. Break the shield. This is the critical step. Every target has a shield, a protective structure that must be removed before the final step. With Iran, the shield was the JCPOA nuclear deal. As long as the deal existed, Iran had international legitimacy and diplomatic protection. Trump tore the deal apart in 2018. The shield was gone. 8 years later, the bombs fell. With Turkey, the shield is NATO, specifically Article 5. If any NATO member is attacked, all members are obligated to respond. As long as Turkey is under NATO's umbrella, Israel cannot strike Turkey without causing a confrontation with the entire Western alliance. So what has been happening with that shield? During his 2024 campaign, Trump threatened to pull the United States out of NATO. He called NATO outdated and told allies he would not protect them if they did not pay. In 2025, he demanded NATO members spend 5% of GDP on defense, a number almost no country can meet. Then, a senior American counterterrorism official resigned and said publicly that, in his assessment, one reason Trump wants to leave NATO is so that America can side with Israel when it goes to war against Turkey. That is not guesswork from an outsider. That is someone who was inside the room telling you what he saw. Now, I want to be precise here. Trump has not left NATO, not yet, but he has been signaling for years that he wants to. And every signal moves in one direction, away from the alliance that protects Turkey. Step 6 is not complete, but it is in progress, and everyone can see where it is heading. Step 7. War. With Iran, this was February 28, 2026. The bombs fell. With Turkey, this step has not happened, but here is what I want you to see. 5 of the 7 steps are already complete. Step 6 is underway right now. That leaves one step, I am not predicting that Israel will bomb Ankara tomorrow. I am showing you a pattern that has repeated with every enemy Israel has targeted. And right now, that pattern is pointing directly at Turkey. Now, here is where the analysis gets really interesting because Turkey is not Iran, and that difference is not small, it is enormous. And it means the playbook, if Israel tries to complete it, could destroy something much bigger than Turkey. Let me show you 5 reasons why Turkey is the most dangerous target Israel has ever considered. First, Turkey has the second largest military in NATO, more than 400,000 active personnel. This is not Iran's military, which had been weakened by decades of sanctions. Turkey has a modern battle-tested fighting force. Turkish troops have conducted real operations in Syria, in Libya, and supported Azerbaijan in the 44-day war that destroyed Armenia's defenses. And Turkey has Bayraktar drones. These are not theoretical weapons. Bayraktars changed the outcome in Azerbaijan. They destroyed Russian-made Pantsir air defense systems in Libya. Israel has never faced an adversary with this kind of offensive drone capability. Second, Turkey is a G20 economy with a GDP of $1.1 trillion. Iran had a GDP of $400 billion under 47 years of sanctions. You cannot sanction Turkey the way you sanctioned Iran. The European Union depends on Turkey for trade, for migration control, for energy transit. Sanctioning Turkey means sanctioning yourself. Europe will never agree to it. Third, Erdogan does not bluff. This is something Western analysts consistently get wrong about Turkey. They assume Erdogan's words are just for domestic consumption. But look at his record. He said Turkey would intervene in Libya. It did. He said Turkey would support Azerbaijan militarily. It did. He said Turkey would put a total trade embargo on Israel. It did. When Erdogan says Turkey could act against Israel the way it acted in Azerbaijan and Libya, his track record says, take him seriously. Fourth, Turkey's alliance with Pakistan introduces a nuclear dimension. Pakistan is a nuclear-armed state. It does not recognize Israel. Turkey and Pakistan describe each other as brother nations. Their militaries conduct joint exercises. Their intelligence services cooperate. If Israel strikes Turkey, the question becomes, what does Pakistan do? Israel has never attacked a country whose closest ally has nuclear weapons. This changes the calculation entirely. And fifth, Turkey's Foreign Minister, Hakan Fidan, is a former intelligence chief. He ran MIT, Turkey's national intelligence organization. He knows how Mossad operates because he has spent his career countering Mossad operations. And yesterday, he went on television and named the playbook publicly. He said Israel cannot live without an enemy. This is turning into a state strategy, not just Netanyahu, the opposition too. When your target's intelligence chief goes on national television and describes your strategy before you have finished carrying it out, your playbook has been compromised. A playbook only works when the target does not see it coming. Turkey sees it coming. Subscribe to Professor Zhang Analysis for more. So here is the real danger. And this is what keeps me up at night. The playbook will likely fail against Turkey. Turkey is too strong, too connected, too aware. But that does not mean Israel will not try. Because the playbook is not driven by logic. It is driven by structure. The machine needs an enemy, and the machine does not have an off switch. If Israel pushes the playbook toward Turkey, even without completing Step 7, the side damage will be catastrophic, not to Turkey, to NATO, because the NATO problem has no solution. If Israel attacks Turkey and the United States stays in NATO, America must defend Turkey against its own closest ally. That is impossible. If the United States leaves NATO to avoid that situation, Russia wins in Europe overnight. 30 years of Western security structure collapses. And if the United States does nothing, both allies lose faith and America loses both. Every path leads to destruction, not of Turkey, of the system itself. The playbook was designed for isolated enemies. Iran had no NATO, no G20, no nuclear-armed brother nation. The playbook worked because Iran was alone. Turkey is not alone. Turkey is embedded in every major Western institution. Pull on that thread, and the entire fabric unravels. That is why I say the playbook will fail. But the damage it causes on the way down will reshape the world order as we know it. 3 predictions. Prediction number 1. Within 6 months, Israel will strike a target connected to Turkey inside Syria. It will be described as an accident or as hitting an Iranian proxy, but the real purpose will be to test Turkey's response. This is how Step 7 always begins, not with a declaration of war, but with a provocation designed to look like something else. Prediction number 2. Before the NATO summit in Ankara on July 7th, there will be a major diplomatic crisis between Israel and Turkey, possibly a military incident in Syrian airspace, possibly an intelligence operation exposed. The summit will become the most important NATO meeting in the alliance's history, because the question on the table will be whether NATO still functions when one member is being targeted by another member's closest ally. Prediction number 3. The playbook will not succeed against Turkey, but in the attempt, it will fracture NATO, speed up American withdrawal from the Middle East, and create a new regional order where Turkey, not Israel, emerges as the dominant power in West Asia. The grand final will not end with a knockout. It will end with the stadium collapsing. Save this video. Come back in 6 months and check. Let me leave you with one thought. I have been studying geopolitical patterns for a long time, and the one thing I have learned is that the most dangerous moment is not when a playbook succeeds. It is when a playbook fails against the target that is too strong, but the machine keeps pushing anyway. Iran was isolated, sanctioned, weakened. The playbook worked. Turkey is a NATO member, a G20 economy, a military power with battle-tested drones, a nuclear-armed ally, and an intelligence chief who just looked into the camera and said, "I see exactly what you are doing." The playbook has never faced a target like this, and I do not think it will survive the encounter. But the question is not whether Israel wins or Turkey wins. The question is what gets destroyed along the way, and the answer, I believe, is the international order itself. This is no longer about one war in one region. This is about whether the system that has kept the world stable for 80 years can survive a machine that was built to run forever and has no off switch. That is my analysis. The predictions start now. I will see you in the next one.